Feet are still sore. Well, welcome back. I was thinking this morning at breakfast, a plenary session on Sunday morning. This is going to be fun. I hope you all had fun during the performance in our dance. If you were paying attention during the lessons earlier in the day, we saw some great moves out there. Folks online, we are so sorry you missed the party and hope you had a wonderful evening wherever you are. And you can believe that can you believe we're in our final hours of this conference? Wow. I know. I gotta find my own dinner now, it's like we hope that you are already feeling inspired and more connected with some beautiful people here or are thinking about connections you can deepen when you get back home and energized about how you carry forward the mission of love and justice. Oh, that kind of reminds me of the time I went to it's my last time to go off script. Come on. Oh God. Since we are celebrating the Eucharist together for just a little while, we are not going to have a formal prayer this morning, but I invite you to take just a moment to breathe deeply and ensure that you are fully present in this time and space and take in the warmth and energy around you.
Thank you. I've got just a couple of announcements, as always, before we get started with our plenary today. First, many of you were here yesterday for our wonderful awards, but there were a couple people whose names we called that were not here. So just briefly, if Kate Gardner is here today, Kate received a President's Award for their participation in the World Youth Day pilgrimage. And then Tim Roberts was honored for leading the Community Service Committee. And Tim had been, I believe, teaching English language learners, which is why he was not able to be present. And finally, and perhaps most significantly, friends, sometimes there are too many things in my brain and I forget things and make mistakes. And so it is my most sincere apology, I must share, that I missed a new member of our perpetual membership. So I'd like at this time to call Lewis and Ben Speaks Tanner forth as the last inductee to our perpetual membership. Finally, I'd like to remind you that between now and the start of liturgy will be your last chances to turn in your completed scavenger hunt. We have a couple great raffle prizes for those who completed your scavenger hunt. So I hope that you have all met some amazing and interesting folks doing this and have been able to turn in your sheet to get entered into that raffle. It will also be the last chances to make your final bids on the silent auction item. Those 3 quilt pieces are gorgeous, and whoever wins them is going to be very, very lucky. The last chance to purchase quilt squares. Are there any left? Ornaments? We might be sold out. 1 ornament left. So if you want, oh, 0. Friends, I'm sorry you have missed the opportunity to hang Mary Ann Duddy Burke on your Christmas tree. We'll be sharing the winners of the quilt at the conclusion of the day. It's also the opportunity to get any last minute tickets for the gift card raffle. I believe we still have 2 raffles left, including the grand prize, which again totals $1,000. So your last opportunity to enter. Additionally, we have about 6 discounted zoo tickets left. So if you are not leaving today and would like to visit the zoo when the four zoo, they are going fast, friends. If you want to go to the zoo at a discounted rate, please see Paula. I believe the discounted rate are $28 each, and there are 4 tickets left that Paula can get to you. When the liturgy concludes, you'll be invited to take home one or more of the little people with names on them to pray for on your journey home. So be looking for the bucket to pick up some little people to take with you. And finally, if you are going to the airport around noon, see Shelby. She is looking for a ride. I think that we are ready for our panel. So at this time, if I could invite our final panel, Sam Albano, Kate Carroll, our own Marianne Duddy Burke, and Brother Christian Matson to come to the stage. And once again, we'll ask you all to rise as you are able to sing our blessing to them.
God be in your hand. God be in your heart. God be in your mind. God be in your soul. God be in your is so that we may see God's face beyond your lips. God be in your love. God be in your hand. God be in your heart. God be in your heart. God be in your soul. God be in our heart. Is know that we see God's face. And He's God beyond your name. God be in your love.
Thank you all. It gives me great joy to introduce our final moderator, Sam Albano. Sam is one of my favorite humans. Sam is one of the leaders in Dignity Indianapolis, one of the first people that I met and became friends with when I came to the chapter. In addition to authoring the fabulous book, God's Works Revealed, which may still be available for purchase.
Sold out.
We are sold out. See Sam for information on how to purchase the book. I'm sure he can get a copy to you. In addition to authoring this amazing book, Sam has been serving as member of the board for a number of years, including the last 4 as secretary. Truly, the board would not run without Sam keeping us on track and reminding me how Robert's rules actually work. So thank you for being here today, Sam.
Well, good morning. We'd like to welcome you to this morning's panel. Welcome to all of you who are present with us here in Columbus, and welcome to those who are joining us online on the live stream. We're certainly glad you're here this morning. And as Melly said, my name is Sam Albano. My pronouns are he, him, and his. All of our panels and workshops this weekend have really held at their center this theme of our conference. We are God's people, here, now, and always. So this morning, we're going to focus on the final part of that theme. We are God's people always. We have three wonderful panelists with us here this morning, and I appreciate that I don't have to be the star of this panel. So they're going to help us unpack and explore this theme a little bit today. And they are delighted to be in dialogue with each other and with all of you. So we're going to get started. We have Kate Carroll here, who uses she, they pronouns. We have Brother Christian Matson, he, him, and Marianne Duddy Burke, she, her. I'd like to give each of our panelists a few minutes to introduce themselves and help us get to know them a little bit better. And also, as part of this introduction, they're going to share with you maybe just a few reflections from this weekend, things that have struck them as poignant and important so far in our conference. So we're going to start with Christian, who's seated to my left. Brother Christian is a professed hermit in the Diocese of Lexington in Kentucky. He currently serves as the chair of transgender ministry for Fortunate Families, and he's writing a book on the theology of trans inclusion. So look for that coming up in the future. I know I can't wait to read it. Christian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Brother Christian. Can you hear me? Yes. Excellent, good. Actually, I have to say that one of the most poignant moments of the entire conference was just now. So, yeah. I was worried I was going to break down sobbing at the start of this, so thank you all for that blessing. That was very moving, and whoever's idea it was to do that, kudos. So I'm a professed hermit in the Catholic Diocese of Lexington under Bishop John Stowe. I was assigned female at birth and transitioned 20 years ago to male when I was in college, when I was Presbyterian, and then a few years later became Catholic after I transitioned through the Jesuits, go Jesuits. And pretty immediately felt a call to religious life. I wanted to become a Jesuit. They said no. Even though I had lots of Jesuits who were rooting for me, but that was the way it went. So I ended up spending 10 years while I was doing my master's and PhD in theology in the UK, and then moving back to New York and working for the Archdiocese of New York, trying to enter religious life. And everybody would basically say, no, we just don't know how to deal with you, somebody with your complex psychosexual history. Or they pointed to this instruction that the Vatican put out 25 years ago, saying that people who are trans could not be ordained, married, or enter religious life for two reasons. One, because surgery is so superficial that it does not change the person's underlying personality, which was male or female as identified at birth. Which begs the question, because the question is your personality always identical with what was on your birth certificate when you were born? And we know that's not true. So I would agree, surgery doesn't change your personality, but your personality doesn't necessarily align with what the doctor guessed at birth. And then two, that being trans is such a severe psychological dysfunction that it basically makes a person mentally incompetent to make and keep lifelong vows, which, again, we know to be BS. What can I say? But that instruction has never been revoked. So for 10 years, communities, I talked to multiple other congregations, would point to that and say, therefore we can't deal with you. And so it wasn't until a friend connected me to Bishop John. And at the time, I was hoping to kind of start a religious order for artists, which I'd still like to do if anybody is an artist that likes to know, because I'm a professional actor and producer. And he said, I'd love to have such a group in my diocese, and let's talk. And I told him my whole medical history, and he said, I'm very moved by your desire to enter religious life. So he asked me to do a novitiate with a currently existing religious community. I went and found a Benedictine monastery that accepted me into the novitiate. Halfway through the novitiate, a friend of mine told the local bishop there that I was trans, and he kicked me out of his diocese, saying that he didn't want to have the conversation about me because the conversation about trans issues, talking about trans issues, was itself harmful to the church. He said the conversation is harmful to the church. So that's kind of what radicalized me. So I was able to finish my formation with another community. I went and made first vows as a diocesan hermit, which basically means I'm a solitary religious, and my vows are made to the bishop, and the diocese is my community. With Bishop John in 2022, renewed them the next year for 3 years, so I'm up for final vows next year. And thank you, please pray for me. And told Bishop John I wanted to come out because there are all these laws being passed and diocesan policies being passed that were based not on truth and not on the process of finding truth, because they were ignoring the people that knew the truth about this experience. So he gave me permission to come out last year, which I did, and this past year has been a whirlwind, but it has led to moments like this. So thank you, Marianne, for the invitation, and Sam. This has been very moving to feel so isolated for so long and feel part of a community, which I imagine is why many of you are here. So that's my story. Oh, and another moment is that cosmic centuries. I'll talk more about that later, but the term from Sister's keynote yesterday about cosmic centuries and being kind of pillars of peace to pray and unify the world with God and with each other, that I've been reflecting on that a lot. There you go.
Thank you, Brother Christian. We'll go now to Kate, and Kate is the current president of Dignity Philadelphia. She was instrumental in the celebration of the chapter's 50th anniversary last year and their recognition of Sister Janine Gramick. She's done some really great work in the Dignity Philadelphia chapter to engage new people, young people. She's done a lot of work around that. And Kate also has a partner named Caden, and she works for a national literacy nonprofit. So I love we have 2 authors and 2 literacy people up here. Kate?
Thank you. It's hard to go after Brother Christian, who has an actor's training and is very used to telling his story. Thank you. But in addition to working for a literacy nonprofit, I'm a musician, and I trained as a clarinet player. So I'm very used to writing lots of notes and having my music and things in front of me. So I wrote out a lot of what I'm going to say today. So thanks for your grace with that. But as Sam said, my name is Kate Carroll. I'm the current board president of Dignity Philadelphia. And Sister Nancy's exercise yesterday to define who we are in this moment reminded me of an exercise I did at my work in the last year to define our leadership purpose. And my job is in philanthropy and operations. And what I came up with at work was my leadership purpose is to question, break, and build better systems to help others carry out their passions in the most effective and efficient ways possible. And what I came up with during Sister Nancy's session yesterday was, I am Kate, a bridge between past and future, and I stand for the responsibility of caring for others, which I bring to my life and work in service to all. I thought those went hand in hand, and maybe you'll think so too after I share a little bit about myself today. But this is my first time attending a DignityUSA conference. And especially after the last few days, I feel incredibly honored to be in the company of such outstanding people, and also really fighting against my imposter syndrome at being up here. But my quick background is that I grew up Catholic in rural Iowa in a very small community. And when I was younger, I loved church. I loved the community and friends that I found there. And as a Leo Virgo cusp, I really loved both the pageantry and the structure of Catholicism. But as I got older and went through Catholic school and CCD and confirmation classes, I couldn't reconcile the contradictions that I experienced between Jesus' message of loving our neighbor and fighting for the oppressed with the pointed exclusion that was being preached to me from the pulpit. So after I was confirmed, I left the Catholic Church for a long time, at first exploring different Christian denominations, and then, feeling pretty solidly atheist, or at least agnostic. But I met my partner, Caden, when we were both living in Boston in 2017. And as we got more serious, Caden shared that their Catholic upbringing and faith was really important to them, and suggested that maybe we find a church community or, explore a faith practice together. Fast forwarding a few years, we moved to Philadelphia to be closer to Caden's family, and it was Caden who found out about Dignity and encouraged us both to go to a Sunday evening service. I was enamored with the community right away. I was blown away by just how different that religious service was from the services I had grown up with. I loved the inclusive language that removed gendered terms for God. And I was so moved to hear a homily by Father Paul Morrissey, which related the queer experience of coming out to Jesus' baptism and how he had to come out of the crowd to make himself known and to live his full life. I had never, heard a homily like that before or seen my experience related to in that way. But more than anything, I fell in love with the people at Dignity Philadelphia. I loved hearing their stories. I loved learning about the beloved members of our community who had passed on and who I'd never met, but I felt like I knew them because of their memory kept alive. And I loved seeing examples of action driven by faith that resonated with me and felt right in a way that my experiences growing up didn't. Coming into Dignity Philadelphia as a young person truly felt like being a celebrity. Everyone was so excited for Caden and I to be there. And I realized that it couldn't just be me and Caden being there. This group did so much for me. It gave me a space to be fully myself. I wanted others my age and younger to know that this type of place existed. The chapter and this nationwide community has such a rich history that I don't want to be lost or to end with me. One thing I do deeply value about my Midwestern Catholic upbringing is the service to others that I learned from the women in my church and my family. And at a party, I feel most comfortable when I'm the one running around, making sure everybody has food and, tending to the details. So I wound up organizing Dignity Philadelphia's 50th anniversary celebration in 2023. And some of our longtime members were hesitant of someone being so new and doing things a little differently. It took time and many conversations to show folks that I was interested in not changing things just for the sake of changing them, but because I really valued everything that had come before and wanted to make sure that this community could continue on and adapt to the needs of our current time. I'm thrilled to say our 50th anniversary was a success. And since then, and thanks part to some news coverage that came from that, Dignity Philadelphia has welcomed some new, younger members. Our community is slowly growing and changing, and we'll need to grow and change along with it. We all have a lot to learn from each other, regardless of our age. As a millennial in my 30s, I feel very flattered to be included in the young Catholic group. But I really feel like my role at Dignity Philadelphia and in this larger community is to not fall squarely into one camp or another, but to be a bridge, relating to and connecting the past to our present moment. This weekend has shown me that I have so much more to learn about the incredible history of this organization and its chapters, as well as the current work of folks across the country and our world. I was supposed to include one impactful moment from this conference in my opening statements, but there's truly just been so many. And I will hopefully be able to speak to those a little later on as we go through some questions.
Thank you, Kate. Last but not least, we'll go to Marianne Duddy Burke. Marianne is our longtime executive director here in Dignity USA, and she currently serves as the co-chair for the Global Network of Rainbow Catholics. Marianne is married to her wife, Becky, who's with us here at this conference. Marianne and Becky have an adult daughter together and also a son who identifies as transgender, and they live in Boston. Marianne?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with everyone and for that incredible blessing. It's really powerful to have you all send those blessings to the speakers, so thank you. I identify as a married lesbian Catholic mom, and I am incredibly grateful and feel very blessed that I found dignity at the age of 21 years old and have had my entire life, my entire adult life, in a community that allows me to live out my baptismal call to be priest, prophet, and leader, as all of us are called to be. I don't think that any other Catholic community could have offered that to so many of us. I prefer to spend the rest of my time talking a little bit about the impactful theme, I will say, that I have been picking up through this conference. I was so moved during the opening panel on Friday by how each person, when asked to describe something unique about themselves, chose something that I think in the broader society would be considered a vulnerability or something shameful, and how they turned that into gift for themselves and for others. And it has resonated throughout all of the conversations with the way that, you know, shame has been described as something that suppresses our realities, that cuts off so many emotions other than angers. I was really struck by that in the one slide from Sister Nancy yesterday. And how our government and our church tell us what is acceptable and what is shameful, and use that power to try and divide people. And what we have seen here this weekend and throughout our history, our coming together, is how we have used that inner authority that we have. We have found that core of truth and strength to deny the power of shaming and the power of divisiveness, to bring us into a joyous and powerful community. And it was so evidenced on the dance floor last night, you know, with people, you know, there was an over 65-year age span on that dance floor of people, you know, and what it shifted in me is that I think we need to move beyond thinking of ourselves as being welcoming and affirming to celebrating, because that's what I saw happening last night.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I was going to briefly introduce myself, but Melly told you pretty much everything you need to know already. Maybe I could add a few details. I am a member of Dignity Indianapolis, where I've been involved since 2011. I attended my first national conference in Minneapolis in 2013, and I often tell people that that was really a life-changing moment for me in my personal history. Since 2021, I have had the opportunity to serve as Secretary of Dignity USA, and I get to connect with so many of you across the country as part of that job. It really is a pleasure in so many ways. For my day job, I am a reading specialist in the public schools in Indianapolis, and as Melly said, I am the author of God's Works Revealed. Here at this conference, I have my partner Ramiro present with me, so we welcome him. And that's enough about me for now. As I'm listening to all of your introductions here on this panel, I'm really struck by both the diversity and the unity that are present in what you're saying. We come from different backgrounds and different experiences, but really, I think, bring together a synergy of ideas and faith. So we're going to ask a few questions of our panelists this morning, and they're going to speak to you for about 2 to 3 minutes each. And remember, I am a rigid timekeeper. But we do want to be able to converse with you on a few topics today. So as I'm thinking about what you've said this morning, I'm hearing really 3 common themes coming through. I'm hearing solidarity, community, and also visibility. And so that's what I'd like our first question to be about this morning. So for our first question, in what way do you see these 3 values of community, solidarity, and visibility being lived among LGBTQ Catholics and allies today? Let's just swoop across the table here, if that's okay.
Well, one thing is the LGBT Catholic community is kind of new to me because, again, I was deep stall for 20 years and also I didn't grow up Catholic. One thing that I have been very gratified to see in terms of community is as I've been learning about Dignity, about New Ways, about Fortunate Families, where I'm a part, noticing the overlap of communities at many ways and communities working together, like you shared our Zoom, Fortunate Family Zoom for Transmutual Aid, in your newsletter, and invited me to be here. I was sharing, about DignityUSA Conference with folks with the Fortunate Families community, the Married Social Justice Collaborative, trans advocacy community, has been sharing information. So, and I don't know kind of what, all the whole history of all of these organizations, but I'm seeing today people working together to help and support each other, and to realize that kind of all hands are on deck right now. And so we have, also folks in the LGBT community, folks in the, pro-immigrant community, folks, with Catholic Charities, Catholic Worker, anyone who has been working to stand up for and defend the poor, basically saying, and those who are marginalized and excluded, saying, we all have to stand up and speak for those whom Christ spent his life living among and walking among and choosing to be with and to make himself a part of in solidarity. And that word solidarity has really been coming to me of, Jesus was in complete solidarity with us, both in his life and on the cross, and bring us with him in his resurrection. And so, especially right now, all these different groups who believe in living Christ's gospel, coming together to build solidarity across different ministries, historical ministries, to speak for those Christ loves now, I've been very gratified to see and encouraged by.
Thank you, Kate.
One thing that really encouraged me to be an out Catholic or to, come back to really identifying in my Christian faith was after the overturning of Roe v. Wade and how that movement was really driven by Christians. And it's important to me to be visible in that way, to be an example of an alternative, radical, loving, impassioned Catholicism, and to, show an alternative to those who are, to my understanding, they're saying they're Christians and not living in a very Christ-like way. And at this time when there are so many Catholics in our national government, in these seats of high power, I feel more now than ever, it's very important for us to be visible and to provide that alternative to these narratives that are out there. I'm inspired by members of our chapter who have always taken care of each other, spending holidays together, driving folks to appointments. I think we've been in an epidemic of loneliness for a really long time, and people are looking for community, and I'm hoping that they're coming to our communities to find that. I've also been really inspired lately by the women in my community, including those like one of our presiders, Kathleen Shuck, and other members of the Women's Ordination Conference. who've been holding weekly prayerful witnesses outside of the ICE office in Philadelphia. It can be really scary to think of taking more direct action to do what we know is right and what Jesus calls us to do, especially when we see the violence that is, perpetrated against those who take this type of action. But I've really felt this, having others around you who share the same values and commitments as you really helps us to be brave and to do the thing. And I've heard so many examples of this weekend and seen so many in my time in my community that I want to continue being part of that tradition. And the quote from the Defender's Prayer, one of the quotes from the Defender's Prayer yesterday really stuck with me of, "We don't beg the church to love us, we become the church for each other."
Thank you, Kate.
Well, I think that so many of us have been feeling really isolated. The energy that has been a hallmark of this conference in a way that I don't really remember from any others, or just the joy of being together and the willingness to break down barriers and understand that, there are these external threats that are really palpable now, and that community is incredibly important. Felt like it was just really lived out all weekend, and I hope that the drive to continue those kinds of connections go home with all of us. And I've been thinking a lot about the role of fear in terms of both division and invisibility, and hoping that one of the things that we carry forth from here is an awareness that fear comes in lots of degrees, right? Of course it is scary to go stand in front of an ICE office or to hand out, know your rights cards to people in your community, or to stand up for transgender rights at a time when there is so much hostility and oppression of that community in particular. But I think we always have to measure what's the risk. For some people, the risk is their lives, their livelihoods, their families, total disruption of their lives. For those of us for whom the risk is less, I feel like solidarity is a call to step over the fear, step through the fear, walk through it, and to be present in whatever way we can for those who really can't. I also feel like it is such an important time for us to demonstrate the real Catholicism or Christianity or religion. So much of this is being done in the name of something sacred, and it's really perverting the sacred. And for those of us, we cannot cede religious ground to those who are acting in ways that violate human dignity and put lives at risk.
Thank you all. Again, so many of these common themes coming through in everything that you all are saying across this table. I'd like to ask another question now that might be of special interest to those seated in this room and those on our live stream. What vision do you have for Dignity USA today, here and now?
Well, I'm not going to venture to give a vision for Dignity USA because I'm here to learn from you, because you all have been doing this a lot longer than I have. And I've been very moved by the community and, like you said, the celebration, the joy that's been present this weekend. I would say my vision for the church, of which Dignity is a core, essential part, is openness, transparency, bravery, the word Parrhesia, boldness, which Pope Francis loved to use, speak boldly, has been coming to mind. That my hope is that as a church, and I know that this is something that has been a virtue of Dignity, is of being able to speak boldly, is that unlike the fear that rules many of our bishops and other representatives of the institutional church today, and our politicians and many folks in leadership, just thinking of poor Senator from Alaska saying, we're afraid of our constituents, and if we go against Trump, well, that's kind of your job. The fear that's ruling so many of us to not even talk about issues like the experience of LGBT folks in the church, or the actual experience of migrants as opposed to invading the border. I'm not going to do that. There's too much. But that we would actually address the facts on the ground and actually listen to each other's actual experiences, as opposed to the ideology we put in place of people's actual experiences, and that we would be able to have these conversations about how we move forward united as followers of Christ, boldly, and have these conversations without fear, without being afraid that someone else's experience is going to contradict mine, and therefore that's a threat to me. People are complicated. Someone's experience may contradict mine, and so therefore we have to be able to live in a world where both those experiences have happened and are true. And how do we reconcile them with what we understand to be true about the world and true about God? And the only way we can do that is staying in the same space together. Like Sisters talked yesterday, the cosmic century is staying there and continuing to stay with each other through the difficulties and the conflict and the impasse, until God's Holy Spirit moves us through that impasse to some greater experience of unity, both with God and with each other. So I think my vision, my hope for the church would be that we can, and the leaders in this room, everyone in this room being a leader in this, speak boldly about what our experiences are, so that we as a church and as the human race can come together to a greater experience of unity and appreciation for each other, and love for each other.
Well, one of the things I'm continually reminded of that I'm most grateful for about Dignity USA is getting to hear Marianne and leadership of this organization, and from all of you, to say things that I feel like I've felt but said so eloquently, and I'm very grateful for that. But though I'm nowhere near as experienced as Marianne or many folks in the room in terms of press appearances, Dignity Philadelphia has been featured in a couple of things in the last couple of years. But after a recent article came out featuring a couple of our members being quoted in it, we got a anonymous 1-star Google review that just said, "You can't be gay and Catholic." And we received similar messages on social media that shared some of the news segments. But I've been thinking about that, and though I don't know if I could say this as eloquently as Marian or maybe some other folks here, when we were talking about the theme of this panel, I was thinking well, actually, being queer and trans Catholics is like the most Catholic thing you can do, the most faithful thing you can do. And I heard that repeated in so many different beautiful ways this weekend. When the institutional church has told us that we have to be different in order for us to be fully accepted by God, for us to be able to look within ourselves and to say that, no, I know that God made me as I am and delights in me the way that I am, is really powerful. And I think Sister Nancy said yesterday that we need to be as we are to be examples of hope for the future. And as someone who works in nonprofits, I think about nonprofits like Ultimate Purpose, which is that ideally we wouldn't need nonprofits to exist, along with my job within it, because nonprofits seek to fill the gaps that society has left. And if we're successful in filling those gaps, in creating better holistic systems of care, there wouldn't be a need for us. And I've been thinking about that lately in terms of dignity. Like, in an ideal world, would we want to be back within the institutional Catholic Church? But what I've realized from being in this community with you all is that our difference is a really incredible strength. And we're used to being told something by an institutional power and running that through our own conscience and understanding of the divine, and then saying confidently the things we do or don't agree with. And I think that's a really important and powerful leadership position that we're in, and a strength of our community, that we're all well-versed in looking at things and interpreting our faith in different ways. And I've been really impacted by a book lately that I finished on the plane on the way here, but it's called Jesus Takes a Side, Embracing the Political Demands of the Gospel. And in it, the author, Johnny Rashid, points out that Christianity started as a faith for the oppressed, and that early Christians formed alternative communities that resisted the temptations or threat of an empire. And this makes me think of our Dignity communities and how well-versed we are to stand up against that in this moment especially.
Thank you, Kate. Marianne?
Wow. So boldness, really claiming and proclaiming Catholicism, really amazing. The concept that came for me about this time was that we can be agents of transformation, and I think, again, in Nancy's talk, she talked about that, when you look at something differently, you change the way things look ultimately. And I think, we have a history of doing that. And now is a time to do it again. And I think that that involves meeting the moment head on. And I've been thinking a lot in the last few days about one of sort of the slogans from the HIV/AIDS, the worst years, when it was just devastating our communities in such rapid ways. And there was a saying going around, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but we grieve in the morning. Many of us were going to many funerals a month. We grieve in the morning, we work and fight in the afternoon, and we dance all night. And I think keeping those things in mind, this is a time where we have to grieve and understand that there really are threats to our community and to many vulnerable people beyond. We have to acknowledge that. We have to grieve for what's lost and acknowledge the fears. We have to do the work. And that's going to be different for us, in each of us, depending on our heres and our own nows. And we also have to make room for those celebrations, whether it's something in community, whether it is experiencing the beauty of nature, whether it is in quiet contemplative prayer. We, as a community of dignity, I think, need to equip people to do all of those things. And we need to be more visible and let all of those people who are yearning for the kind of community that we have found either in our home places or here this weekend, to know that there are places that can help them move through this time.
Thank you. Marianne, your thoughts, I think, lead us really well into the last question that I have for all of you this morning. At this time, we're moving into the final hours of our conference, which, from what I've heard from so many of you this weekend, is a sort of mountaintop kind of experience. And now we prepare to leave this place and go out into the world. So as we go forth and as we are commissioned at the end of this morning's liturgy, what do you see our work being as LGBTQ plus Catholics and allies who live in the United States of America in the year 2025?
to be present and visible and not go away. There's a lot of people who would like us to just roll over and accept laws and rights being taken away, and bishop statements who have said, you know, if you're trans, you can't receive communion and you can't be visible in any kind of ministry. You can maybe help out quietly in the back of the food pantry and put your money in the plate, but you can't, you know, sing, you can't proclaim, you know, the word, you can't be visible. We basically want to make sure that you disappear, and that you can't be seen. And that was the one thing, you know, that the bishop said, you know, when I left the monastery, he required them to scrub all evidence that I'd ever been there. He basically wanted it to be a world where he could pretend I didn't exist. And there's so many of folks in the church who would like to pretend you can't be gay and Catholic, or you can't be trans and Catholic, or trans and Christian. And it's just not true, and we know it's not true. And so I was talking with a friend about, you know, I came out a couple of my parish priests before I came out publicly, and they've been ordained just in the past 5-10 years. None of them had any discussion about LGBT stuff in their seminary. One of them had never even heard the term intersex before. And he had a master's in like counseling and you know, had been through seminary. And one of them, it was just mentioned in his bioethics class, but it wasn't actually discussed, you know, and when that topic has come up, people say, well, it's so rare, we really don't have to talk about it. No, you're going to have intersex parishioners, you're going to have gay and trans parishioners, it's going to happen, we're there. But we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to acknowledge that human sexuality is more complicated than the church has been willing to admit. And as I was talking with my friend, you know, we were talking about, he was in seminary, he's now thankfully been ordained, and I think he's going to be a great priest because he's been open to these conversations, that if we ignore the facts on the ground, then our theology is going to be lacking. That ignoring facts leads to bad theology. And I don't remember who just said it, but bad theology kills. You know, that was said this weekend. Bad theology kills, and good theology gives life. And so what I hope we can do going forward is speak as loudly as possible. If everyone can share their stories as loudly as often as possible and amplify other people's stories, not to, you know, make a big ideological point, you know, which is what everybody's afraid of. That's not the thing. It's to just share truth, that this is my actual experience. You think that you can't be, you know, gay or trans and Catholic. Well, I am. Here's how much I love Jesus. Here's how much, if I didn't give a fig about the church, you know, why would I self-identify as Catholic, or why would I self-identify as wanting to be a part of, you know, a Catholic adjacent community? You know, why would I identify as, you know, being a Christ follower? It's because I love Christ. And so, you know, sharing one's own story and saying, you know, these are the actual facts. This is truth, and truth cannot contradict truth. So we don't have to be afraid that sharing our true experience is going to contradict what's true about the gospel. They cannot contradict each other, you know, and if they seem to, then our understanding of the gospel needs to grow. So that would be my hope, that if each one of us can share our true experience and our understanding of truth and keep it in front of everybody as they're making decisions about what they believe to be true, to show them your understanding of what is true is not big enough. It's not big enough. You know, have greater confidence in the truth of the world and the people that God has created.
As I was hearing your last statements, Christian, I was thinking of something that was shared in one of the workshops by a new friend from Dignity Detroit about how, you know, when things are very dark, you got to look for the lights that will lead you to where you're going, like in a movie theater or an airplane. And you and all of us living our authentic selves as queer Catholics are those lights for other people. And I think that's really important for us to continue to do. But I want to commend Marianne and everyone at Dignity USA for all of the incredible work it's taken to be visible. as we have been in the media over the last couple of years, especially. I heard from another new friend from Texas who I met over the weekend that she's here at this conference because she heard about Dignity USA on an NPR segment. So there are folks out there looking for us. And I also want to highlight some of those people who've been lights for me, who've been using media and communication tools of our day to share queer theology, which have really shaped my own thinking, including the presiders of Dignity Philadelphia, Sister Janine Gramick and New Ways Ministry, Max Kuzma with his blog and podcast, my sister-in-law, Teresa Thompson, with her incredible writing and t-shirt making, and Emma Slick with her oral history project, and many more that I've learned about this weekend and have yet to dig into. And it's such a blessing for folks to share their gifts in this way. In addition to sharing information in this way, I again see our work of being visible and vocal alternatives to these other forms of Catholicism, to those who say they're Catholic, but acting in un-Christ-like ways is really important. I also see our work as coalition building. There are so many of us doing important work, and we become all the more powerful when we work together. And as our government becomes more hostile to LGBTQ people, especially to trans people, we have to continue to care for one another. I think about the stories I hear of queer folks taking care of each other during the AIDS crisis. And while I hope that we don't come near to that level of devastation and fear, I think it's wise that we learn from the lessons of that time and build up those communities of care. And I think this is something that I could really learn a lot more about, and I'm very excited to be in community with you all to do that. One more minute. I'm getting my timer. Okay. A couple things. I think it'll be useful for us to strengthen our muscles of conflict, both within our own communities and also how we interact with others. My Midwesternness tells me that's very wrong, but I've learned that having those conversations is very useful, and it helps bring about a lot. And I want to end on saying that I've heard a lot about hope this weekend, and it'll be important for us to continue to look for it. And in this book I've been reading recently, there's a quote that I wanted to share, which is that we participate with hope with the belief that change is possible. We are motivated by the transcendent in order to enact the imminent. Because we have partaken of the bread of life, we have the sustenance to endure the difficulty of political progress. And my own addition to that is that we'll be further sustained by the relationships that we build and nurture with one another.
Thank you, Kate.
I really agree that I think a big part of the work that we have to do in however long ahead is to help people understand their inner authority and act from that and reject all of the ways of thinking, the facts, so-called facts that are given to us by whether it's the media, whether it's church officials, whether it's government officials. The truth lies within and is sacred. And we as LGBTQ people and as allies know how to reject all of those external things and live into freedom. I also think we have a special responsibility to help people deal with religious trauma, which is so crippling for so many of us, and which keeps us from living rich, full, and abundant lives. And to help people do that will give some of that hope and will empower more people to bring their full selves into service to other people. So I feel like that's really important in the now and in the long term. One of the most impactful things for me, and again, this sits on my desk, is a quote that was said when we met with about a dozen of our young adult leaders last April, that Dignity's long-term mission should be to raise up a generation of queer youth that do not experience religious trauma. And I find that so motivating.
Thank you all. We have just a short time before we have to conclude. We are quickly moving toward our liturgy this morning. We were going to offer the opportunity to ask questions. We have time. Do we have time for a couple questions? Yeah, yeah. We're going to offer a chance for folks to ask a couple of questions during this time. We would ask that you please limit your question to 60 seconds. And remember, I am a rigid timekeeper. When you ask your question, please let us know to whom on our panel you would address your question, to Christian or Kate or Marianne. So if you have a question, please raise your hand or get Libby's attention. Libby's walking around with the microphone there.
I just wanted to know, get some elaboration. Do you see Dignity USA as being a voice in the media for social justice issues that may not be directly tied to either LGBTQ issues or Catholic issues for that matter? Like, so for example, what's going on with the ICE raids?
Our policy has generally been to support folks who are known as the experts in that area. When we can, we kind of slip messages of solidarity into our media work, but even when we do that, the media wants us to talk on LGBTQ Catholic things. I think there are lots of other audiences, like real people, that where it's easier to talk about the interconnection of other issues. Obviously, it's important. That is the work of coalition. Things that we do. We do sign on and support a lot of statements, but we don't try and take the lead on areas that aren't our major area of expertise, except in how, we will talk about how LGBTQ people face additional issues in the immigration process, in the refugee process, as employees, what are medical issues, all of those kinds of things. But in terms of the general issue, we kind of be a supporting partner.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Astley, and I'm sort of from Boston. I live in Michigan. What are 1, 2, or 3 things that we can do as individuals to be that bridge with Dignity USA to affect that change?
I, as someone kind of new to returning to this community and learning so much about organizations that I had no clue existed when I was growing up, I think one thing about spreading the information about the wonderful resources that exist in our community is talking to younger people or to other folks who are not directly in our community. If I had known about things like the Catholic Worker Movement or about Network, the advocacy organization, I think my life would have been very different. So sharing those resources, continuing to be that voice, I think is important. And kind of touching on the last question, I think too that even though I think it makes sense for us not to try and speak to issues that we're not the experts on, it is really important to listen to those people who are experts, who are the most affected, who are the most impacted by systems of oppression, and to join in their campaigns. Not only is that going to, build a groundswell of support, and as LGBTQ Catholics, we understand aspects of oppression, and as Marian said, we should use our privilege to help other people. But it'll also bring more people to our organizations and causes and things that we care about, and that's how solidarity works. We're helping each other in these different areas so that we can all get more free.
I think we have time for one more question this morning. Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. My question is, I can't hear myself. My
You're
name is
good.
Blaine. Pleased to meet everyone. I'm happy to be here. I have a question about what would you say that would help us through our own individual conversion to affect change as not to be similar to the folks that we claim to be against? Meaning that how do we make the change happen and create dialogue? Because all of us are on our own journey in conversion every day. How do we convert people in a way that creates dialogue and loving relationships and not be as rigid as some of the people we claim who are and show Christ's love?
Okay, Christian.
Thank you for that question. I was struck again by Sister Nancy's, phrasing of the cosmic centuries. And I think one thing that's been difficult for a lot of us over the last few years is seeing friends and family become unrecognizable as they've, been taken in by various ideological thoughts and movements. And one thing that I've found helpful is taking deliberate time to pray for President Trump, to pray for my family members who support, and my fellow Catholics who support that ideology, to pray for the person and the bishop who kicked me out of the monastery, to pray for the people who send me hate mail and send my friends hate mail, to sit down, and when I do my contemplation, there was one exercise that a Buddhist friend gave me, which was spending time, just sitting and experiencing God's love and God's love for me, and then letting that go to the people around me and experiencing God's love for my family, my close friends, and then taking some time to let that light and that warmth and that experience of God's love spread to the people in my community, in my church, in my country, in the world, and deliberately spending time in each of those areas on this person I'm angry at, or this person who has done something bad, or this person who is actively out to get me and people I love. And realizing that what God wants is the salvation of everyone, that our hope for the community in heaven would be that Donald Trump would be there, converted. I keep saying I hope he goes to prison and has a conversion experience, and then, gives his whole wealth to LGBT orphans from Mexico, But that's what I want. Like, I don't want him destroyed. I want us all to be in community. And I think that if we can hope for and desire for and actively cultivate that desire to be in a shared community with the people in our country and our church who don't want us to exist, and pray for that, greater miracles have happened, and pray for their conversion of heart. Pray for our conversion of heart where we give in to anger and bitterness, because that is harmful not only for us but for community. And actively pray for and spend time loving the people who make our lives difficult.
Marianne, did you have something to add?
I'm gonna let my close namesake, Marianne Buddy, guide on this one a bit. I think having the right frame of heart through prayer and trying to build community that way is important. I think the way in which we interact and the things that we do are also really important here. I think it is important to find ways to challenge those folks and be sure that they understand the impact that bad actions, bad attitudes, sinful belief has on other people. Whether we're talking about our own, need for protecting ourselves and standing up for our own rights, or for others who are impacted. Maybe they don't feel like they can say anything anti-LGBTQ to us, but those immigrants who come into this country and drain our healthcare resources and blah, 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 yeah. We can't, I think, we can't just pray for them. We need to confront and challenge those attitudes and show solidarity as well. So
Thank
pray
you.
and act.
I would say this is definitely a both and, not an either or. Definitely a both and.
Both and.
Can I add one thing, Sam?
It,
One thing really quick.
you have 15 seconds.
I think pulling on the themes from everyone I've heard here today, hate and love are not necessarily opposites. Or anger and love, rather. Anger and love are not opposites. Jesus was righteously angry that there were evil actions taken against his people. He loves all of us. And it's okay to use some of that righteous anger to work towards the love that we all feel, or, that God wants us to all feel for each other. And someone here this weekend mentioned, thinking about Jesus and having a conversation with him. And when I asked some folks from Dignity Philly what did they want me to represent here today or say, one of our members, Charlie, mentioned that he, thinks about having conversations with Jesus daily and, talks with him about how does he want him to go throughout his day in the world. And I think if we incorporate more of that, though it'll be challenging, and though, people may disagree with us, having Jesus as like a modern day companion and friend walking with us will help guide the things that we do moving forward.
Thank you. Well, the time is 10 o'clock, which means that we are going to be wrapping up our panel. We are quickly approaching our 10:30 liturgy, and I think in just a moment we're all going to be asked to get out. But I do want to thank our panelists, Marianne and Kate and Christian. I think,
And Sam as a great moderator.
as